It's my utter pleasure to welcome Merope Zanisakis from the University of Manchester, and also a dear affiliate with our research platform, Governance of Digital Practices, here at the University of Vienna. Merope is a lecturer in digital criminology at the University of Manchester. She's recently moved to that post and was previously also with the universities of Innsbruck, of Vienna. She got the Erwin Schrödinger Fellowship. She was with Essex, the sociology department, and also Oslo. So an interesting career and CV. And her main research lines or areas of research are digitally mediated forms of drug-related deviance and supply and demand in illicit drug markets, but also she contributes to the emerging field of digital criminology, and she explores how drug distribution platforms emerge as infrastructures that mediate between different user groups. Is what I'm taking from her website, but she can tell us more about that. Merope, we are thrilled to have you today, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing from you on the issue of illicit drug markets and the connections you'd like to draw to democracy and governance and platform giants. Over to you.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction, Lucas. Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today and to present you some of my work. As Lucas has mentioned, I am actually an interdisciplinary researcher. I have at the intersection of political science, criminology, and sociology, and I have done my master's as well as my PhD in political science at the University of Vienna. So it kind of feels like coming home, although I'm now based at Manchester. I would like to start my presentation with showing you a screenshot of one of the platforms I'll be talking about today. It's called Silk Road. It was the first one. It had kind of a monopoly position in this space of digital drug markets, and you were able to buy different types of drugs, as you can see on the first screen, on the first picture, 1 gram of MDMA with an 82% of purity, or at least advertised purity, as a quality signifier made in Germany for 1.3 Bitcoin, which is dating back to 2012 or 2013. Now it would have been like 19,000 euros. So it would be way too expensive to buy 1 gram MDMA. So most importantly, you could buy different types of drugs, and the way the navigation works on the left side of the screen has been kept. Although Silk Road was closed by the FBI in 2013. Since then, all of the marketplaces, all of the platforms kept the same way of navigating through. So mostly, like more than 70% of the products are related to drugs, but you could also buy sunglasses, sneakers, I don't know, hacker instructions, and other digital goods, which are not at all prohibited. But let's move on to my argument for this talk today. And with this argument, I'll be bringing together different strands of literature. I'll try to bring together digital criminology as well as digital sociology and critical digital economy literature. By doing so, I'll also bring together literature that is concerned with the licit as well as the illicit realms in our societies. Digital drug markets are part of a wider processes of digitalization, and they are embedded in larger societal developments called platform capitalism. I would like to argue that crime in a digital society can be understood and explained by taking into account the political economy it is situated in. I argue that digital drug markets, although they do operate on the dark side of digital economy, they cannot evade the mechanisms in place at society at large but rather a small cogwheel dependent on larger societal changes. And I would like to briefly mention that this talk is based on digital ethnographic observations and big data analysis, namely web scraping of the crypto market environment since 2014. But I would also like to acknowledge some of my collaborators, Stefan Marx from University of Vienna. I've been working with him on the connection between platform capitalism and digital drug markets, and Nigel South from the University of Essex. I am editing a book with him on digital transformations of illicit drug markets, which is going to be published by Emerald this year. Next, I would like to give you an overview of my talk today. So I will deliver the talk in 3 parts. The first part is going to be about digital transformation and platform capitalism. Then I'll be talking about what are digital drug markets, what are crypto markets. And in the third part of my talk, I'll try to give you an answer to the question of the title, which is what do platform giants have in common with illicit drug markets. Let's start with the digital transformation. Oops, sorry. That was way too fast. Let's start with the digital transformation of capitalism. I would like to first of all address that digital drug markets are embedded in the digital transformation. So digital drug markets are part of a wider process of digitalization. And the digital transformation is changing the social order and everyday life. And here I can give you some examples. So digital transformation is changing how we get information by using search engines, for example, or it's also changing the way we communicate with each other by using Zoom, for example, as today, or by using social media apps. And I would like to argue against technological determinism, which means that digital technologies are not the main driver for political, economic, social change. Rather, technologies are human-made and thus depend on how political decision makers regulate technologies, how we negotiate them, our discourses on digitalization. Moreover, I would like to argue that digital, or not me, but many other researchers have argued that digital technologies enable and constrain action. And internet is also of global reach, but comes with geographical disparities, perpetuating power and inequality, geographical disparities regarding access, local context and constraints, as well as the way we use technologies and the effects of this using of technologies or using the internet has. And I would like to move on saying that virtual and offline realms are inseparably connected to each other. So early analysis of the internet stressed that there is the cyberspace and there is the real life. While nowadays, it's especially since COVID, it's kind of, I think most of us have figured out in their everyday lives that the digital technology can't be, is an integral, ubiquitous part of our everyday life, no matter if we navigate only on digital spaces or even I don't know, use Google Maps in order to find your way through when you walk in a city. Another example for the inseparability of online and offline interactions is, and I will come back to that later on, the darknet drug markets also do require a postal system for the drugs that are ordered online, but have to be delivered to the customers in a physical way. So the postal system is mandatory as a mandatory part, but there were also other ways to circumvent that. Another example is the diffusion of pagers and mobile phones for retail drug distribution, which has been in place since the 1990s in order to minimize the risk of police detection. And another aspect of the embeddedness of drug markets in the digital transformation is that digitalization also means that negative phenomena of the analog capitalism are further intensified. Now I'd like to move on and elaborate on the digital transformation or contribute to how we can understand the digital transformation by explaining it as a threefold process of datification, algorithmization, and platformization. And with datification, I mean the increasing quantification of everything, of every interaction we do. When I used to live in Vienna, it was not like that. But since I moved to Manchester, there is hardly anything that I do without using my phone. So I leave, and this is includes a two-factor authentication for which I have to use my phone when I access the most university platforms and softwares, but also when I make a payment or whatever. So data is being produced, processed, and analyzed, and social decisions are increasingly based on data. For example, imagine how you decide to go on a date with someone. Mostly, probably you're using a dating app. With this comes an ubiquitous digital data monitoring. And the second process I would like to address is algorithmization, which means more or less automated problem solving or data processing procedures. But it also means the economic, political, and social use of big data. An algorithm is, and I should have mentioned that previously, an algorithm is, if X is the case, then Y should follow. So the question is, the question is one of, are correlations legitimized? Are algorithms free from subjectivity? Are algorithms free from errors? Are algorithms without influence? No, they are not. But very often one would assume that this is the case. And the third process I would like to address today in my talk is platformization. It is ubiquitous. Platforms are ubiquitous in Western societies. Think about Amazon, Google, Uber, Airbnb, Facebook, YouTube, Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding platform for those who don't know it. So many sectors, platforms are present in many sectors and areas of our lives. Platforms are some sort of market stalls, and they always come with a promise of freedom, freedom of constraints, freedom of commitments for the users. And platforms are designed in a way that the user interaction can be observed, as well as data can be extracted from that interaction. And platformization also means that platforms have network, so-called network, or we are able to understand platformization with the theoretical approach of network effects. Network effects basically means the more users are on a platform, the better it is for the platform. But the result of that is the winner takes it all. So think about Amazon, for example. There is hardly any product you won't find on Amazon. Think about Facebook. There is hardly anyone who is not using Facebook. So when you want to move to a different social platform, then the question is, what price are you willing to pay in order to not be connected to some of your virtual and even offline friends? Let's move on to platform capitalism. So platforms are, per definition, infrastructures that mediate between providers and consumers. In our case here today, platforms mediate between vendors, which are drug dealers, and buyers, the customers. Platforms are designed, which more or less means programmed, to extract data from our social interactions. They're analyzed to analyze them in order to make money out of them and use and sell them for profit. The business model of platforms is based on data. Data is a resource, it's a so-called raw material, and it allows for competitive advantages over other companies that have not yet based their business model on the platform. So platform capitalism means in that sense that it is no longer work and natural resources that determine the accumulation of surplus value, but it is user data. It's about a relationship of exploitation based on user data. On the surface, platforms are digitized marketplaces where goods can be exchanged or shared, while below the surface, on the other hand, enormous data collection can be skimmed off by means of algorithmic data analysis by platform operators. So the platform Facebook, in particular, has been considered a blueprint for emerging platforms of the Silicon Valley. And I'll come back to that in a second. Now I would like to move on to the second part of my talk, which is about digital drug markets. So the particular type of digital drug markets I'll be talking later on is crypto markets. Crypto markets are digital drug selling platforms which make use of two types of technology. So they bring them together. The first type is anonymizing software like the Tor browser. And the second type is cryptocurrencies in order to make payments online without leaving traces by using additional technologies, I have to stress. So crypto markets did bring together those two technologies for the first time and have been regarded as a transformative criminal innovation because of this very fact. They allow the delivery, the drugs being ordered online have to be delivered in some way physically to the address of the customer. And in the global north, this is being done by using postal services. The answer would be different for the global south, especially for, and I can come back to that in the Q&A session. Very briefly, I would like to mention that crypto markets are located in the darknet, and the darknet is a part of the internet that is hidden. It contains hidden services and can only be accessed by using, for example, a Tor browser, but there are other darknets as well, which make use of other technologies like Freenet is another darknet, or I2P, but they're less popular, less successful anyway. So the darknet contains a very small part of the internet. The much larger part of the internet is the so-called deep web. So the content of the deep web is accessible only when you log in, or when you make a payment, or it can be, for example, an intranet of a university or a database. And the much smaller part of the internet is actually the surface web. So it's called surface web because it's visible and it can be indexed by search engines. So Google, for example, is the most popular search engine, which allows you access to the surface web. While when you want to get access to the deep web, you can't use Google. You can't use Google to show you the results of, I don't know, a travel booking platform, for example. Anyway, let's come back to the darknet. It is a part of the internet that enables the users to communicate with each other almost completely anonymous without revealing identifying information. And this is important because usually when you navigate through the internet and you browse through the internet, you leave via cookies, you leave traces, information, metadata, information that can be traced back to you, your particular user habits. This is not the case in the darknet. So as I have been, and crypto markets are located in the darknet. As I have been mentioning in the beginning, there was Silk Road. It had kind of it pioneered the phenomenon of crypto markets, and it had kind of a monopoly position, which was ended by the FBI in the year 2013. And since then, we have many other marketplaces and platforms which followed. And the most important thing is that the identity and physical locations of the users are almost untraceable if used with care and with the right settings, which at the same time discourages law enforcement interventions, which doesn't mean that law enforcement is not successful, but it's just more complicated to do their work. So when Silk Road was closed by the FBI, this is the situation we have since then. We have a myriad of different marketplaces that have emerged or have closed, again, competing for market share. Whenever a single crypto market closes, either voluntarily or by law enforcement, new platforms reach similar sales levels within months. So nowadays we have about 12 platforms of varying sizes and offering various features, with vendors competing for customers. Different features can be different languages or payment methods, or sometimes even different products. So not every crypto market allows the sale of weapons, for example. Let's move on to who are the customers. What we know from previous research is that most customers are between 20 and 40 years. They're very technical skilled. They're male, 80% male, and they can be characterized as recreational or occasional drug users. Some of them are dependent and potentially have potentially problematic drug use habits, and they're in professional employment and or tertiary education. That's also interesting to keep that in mind. Who is the target group of those drug selling platforms? Why do people buy drugs online? Because, and the data, what I'm having on this slide is actually data from online surveys which have been conducted with customers. People do perceive that when buying drugs online, the quality is higher. The range of drugs available online is there is more different types of drugs available online compared to street level drug distribution, and it's much more convenient to order drugs online. Interestingly, customers trust vendors with high reputation scores, vendors which have a positive feedback. What are the most popular drugs sold on crypto markets, on darknet drug markets? About 70% of all sales are being made with cannabis, ecstasy, and cocaine related products, no matter when the study has been conducted. That's also interesting. So what we do not find here is heroin. Heroin is less popular on crypto markets compared to street. And what about how much money is being made on crypto markets? Initially, it was about $15 million in 2012, which increased to about $100 million in 2013, and the figure of about $100 million remained the same since then. And if you compare the, let's say, 100 million with an estimated by the European Monitoring Agency for Drugs of the EU retail drug market, which has been estimated at 28 billion US dollars. You see that crypto markets still make a very small share of the overall drug markets. And here we are comparing a crypto market, one very popular crypto market, acting globally with the estimated retail drug market of the European Union. So we are kind of comparing, I don't know, peaches to onions. It doesn't really work, but just to give you an idea about the dimension we are talking about. It's a very small share, but it's becoming more and more important, and that's probably relevant for us today. So what about the self-reported origin of sellers? Where do drug dealers ship from? Most of the drug dealers are based in the United States, 25%, 33% are based in Europe, and 9% Australia, which is, regarding the size of the country and its population, it's quite astonishing. But it tells us a lot about countries of the global south, which seem not to be involved at all. 25%, to be fair, I have to say, did not indicate where they ship from. Where do the sellers deliver to? They deliver mainly to North America and to Europe. On the one hand, on the other hand, about 43% also deliver worldwide. And this is related to the risk a vendor, a drug seller, is willing to take. I have to say that data for doing this analysis is being provided or is being offered on the crypto markets, on the drug selling platforms themselves. And this is information that vendors make accessible to customers or anyone visiting the platform in order to assess how risky it is for the customers and how likely an order will arrive. And of course, it makes a difference if you order within the same country or within the same region, or if you order from another continent. So let's move on to the next and the third part of my talk today. And with this, I'm going to try to give you an answer to what do platform giants have in common with illicit drug markets. If you don't have some clues yet, well, I would like to mention that I would like to stress that the method that we have been using in order to do this analysis is a dialectical method. Dialectics is the comparison of thesis and antithesis for critical reflection and mediation of the fundamentally contradictory facts implied in the terms used. So capitalism itself is based on fundamental contradictions, which constantly create dilemmas for state and society at large, and in turn must be resolved in any way. So we have been using the dialectical method and examined the contradiction between state control and self-regulation. What do I mean by state control? State control is something that happens externally. And I will give you an example of state control. One way the state controls drug market is by policing them. And here you see a figure of the revenues that have been made on different drug selling platforms on the darknet. And then you see between July 2014 and January 2015, you see at the upper part of the figure, you see Operation Animus, and this was a large-scale international police corporation which aimed to shut down as many marketplaces on the darknet, as many platforms as possible. So what happened was a significant short-term impact on the numbers of vendors and the platforms. The prices also increased during that short-term impact, But what you can't see on this figure, and it hasn't been published in that particular study, but you see that long term, or you don't see it, sorry, I'm contradicting myself. So long term, we were able to see no disruption. So there seems to be a large resilience of crypto markets and users as well as vendors who migrate to other different platforms and different vendors. So within weeks or months, the whole ecosystem recovers, the prices did not increase, and the sale volumes were back as normal as before. Similar effects were also observed for other takedowns, which happened later on with crypto market platforms called Alphabay and Hansa. So this demonstrates the need for a holistic approach towards darknet drug markets, balancing law enforcement, prevention, and health-related interventions. And with this, I would like to go back. So what we have been doing here is looking at the external control, which is about policing drug markets, versus the internal self-regulation of drug markets, of crypto markets. And the internal self-regulation refers to how the market is organized. I'll come back to that in a second. And the analysis shows that within this contradiction, or as a result of this contradiction between the external policing of drug markets and the internal organization of crypto markets, something like a free field was created, which allowed digital infrastructures to be designed without any external regulations. And I will try to explain that in the next with the next slide. So as I have been, let's start with the internal control. As I have been mentioning earlier, the Facebook platform was considered a blueprint for platforms of the Silicon Valley, but not only for the Silicon Valley. Obviously, this is also true for drug selling platforms. The internal control means that profits can be skimmed off using, for example, the like button, tweets, hashtags, upload function, content sharing features, etc. By using metadata, metadata refers to who communicates with whom, where people communicate, when is someone communicating with whom, and for how long. So all these activities generate data. Customers write reviews, vendors create profiles, describe the drugs, set the conditions for sale, the terms for sale. Both sets of actors interact, like the vendors and the customers interact with each other in forums as well as on platforms. And this refers to what I have on the slide named presumption. Presumption is a concept by Ritzer. He's an American sociologist, and he merged two terms. The one is production. The user produces content as well. He merged with consumption. The user produces content and consumes the content at the same time. So what we can observe here is we have unpaid work. So while the users or customers write reviews, they're not being compensated in any way. And on the other hand, they are at the same time also reading through the reviews that other customers left them. So the unpaid work as well is a sign for the conversion of the drug market infrastructures to platform capitalism. Consumers are no longer the reason for the existence of the market, but become a means for other market purposes. The consumers become suppliers of the raw material of behavioral data, to cite Zubov. so the raw material from which a profit is made. And with this, I would like to conclude that arising from the contradiction between state control and self-control, the platform operators secure the greatest possible leeway in shaping the organization of the market and turn platform users into suppliers of the raw material of behavioral data. They attempt to systematically remove state control over illicit drugs. By doing so, this allows us to get a better understanding by elaborating different contradictions. This allows us to get a better understanding of how digital drug platforms are part of the socio-economic structures in which they operate, capitalism in general, as well as platform capitalism in particular. In platform capitalism, the methods of social control and economic exploitation are multiplied in the form of ever more refined means of measuring and controlling behavior, one which can no longer evade even on the darknet. And the role of the digital platform, drug selling platform operators is one that needs further theoretical as well as empirical research. And also drug prohibition, which is the main policy approach towards drugs, needs to be reinterpreted. We need to address drug prohibition also in the context of the platformization of drug markets. Profits are not only made by selling drugs, they are also made by online interactions of various user groups and from the illegality of the drugs traded itself. This means that new challenges that political decision makers, drug services, prevention, law enforcement, as well as researchers face new challenges, and we need to provide new answers for those challenges. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to your comments. Maybe you have questions, and feel free to ask whatever you find interesting. Maybe you have questions of understanding. That would be nice as well.